Kal Kadosh Boker Or Bekiim Bahalacha 4 Day 85 is the preface for the time of Tefillin, which is going to be Siman Lamed, and we are on page 213. Okay, the Gemara Masechet Menachot teaches that according to Rabbi Yosef Gilileh, the mitzvah of Tefillin applies during the day only and not during the nighttime. Okay, he learned this from the pasuk of the Shamarta et HaChukah Azol L'Moadah Miyamim Yamima. So you have to do it from day to day. So therefore, he also derived from this pasuk that the mitzvah applies only on weekdays, right, and not on Shabbat and Yom Tov. Rabbi Kiva disagreed with this interpretation, and he says that the pasuk is referring to Kurban Pesach, but not the mitzvah of Tefillin. Okay, yeah, he says the Rambam, he ruled that the time for wearing tefillin is during the day, but not during the night, since it says miyamim yamima. A few paragraphs further, he added, if someone puts on tefillin after sunset, he has transgressed a positive commandment, since the pasuk says and the Kesef Mishnah both, right, explain that the Rambam ruled according to the opinion of Rabbi Yosef Gilileh, but the Kiryat Sefer, which is Rav Yosef, Rav Moshe ben Yosef Trani, right, and of David ben Zimra, the Radbaz, they explained that the Rambam agreed that according to the Torah, the mitzvah tefillin applies during the nighttime as well, and he only brought it as an asmachta, meaning, does the Rambam 100% paskin like Rabbi Yosef Gilileh, or is it, no, that really be'emet, it's only an asmachta. So can I wear tefillin at nighttime or not? That's the question. Okay? The Rosh and Tosfot and other Rishonim ruled that the mitzvah tefillin applies during the day and the night. And they explained that the Chachamim instituted a rule forbidding us to putting on tefillin during the night, since people are likely going to fall asleep, right? And then a person might break wind while wearing the tefillin. Obviously, you remember you have to have your body very clean during putting on tefillin. According to the Nachlatzin Shagat the Rif, he agreed with the Rambam that there's no mitzvah tefillin at all during the nighttime, but the Zerachia Levi, the Razah, and the Rosh interpreted the Rif's words to mean that there is a mitzvah to wear them at night as well. Rabbi pointed out that Rabbi Yerucham wrote clearly that according to the Rif, the mitzvah tefillin applies both during the day and during the nighttime. Shulchan Aruch ruled, according to the majority of the Rishonim, that the mitzvah of tefillin applies at night as well, but that we are not permitted to put the tefillin during the night, since people are liable to fall asleep while wearing them. Okay? Mitzuyan. יש לך את הספר. מה? כן. עכשיו הלכה א', תחילת זמן הנחת תפילין בבוקר. is מעת שהעיר היום כשיעור שירד חברו הרגיל עמו בקצת בריחוק 400 ויכירנו. So this is called the pshat of mishiakir. מה זה mishiakir? The earliest time to put on tefillin in the morning is when you could see your friends that you usually שירד חברו הרגיל עמו, meaning that you know him a little bit. It's not that some you don't know who the guy is, right? And you're able to recognize him within the 1.92 meters, within 2 meters. Okay? So he says, V'shiur zeh hu k'sha'ah zmanit kodem netz hachama. So it's around an hour, zmaniyot, before nets. V'im efshar le'acher zman hanachat tefillin ma'at yoter achar zman zeh, adif la'asok ken. If you have a choice, try to do it even later than that. Meaning there's no purpose of trying to do it as early as possible. You should always try to make sure, right, that they're able to do it even later. They do it only 50 minutes before the nets, right? And that's actually good to do that. Okay? Now, right? So therefore, for them, you could be mekel, for the people of the mamash, even 6 minutes afterwards. Meaning, it all depends on the time. For example, people that are the zman, it's called the poalim minyan. So poalim minyan, if they're going to pray before nets, so technically you could already be mekel even from 6 minutes right before, right? So he says, but really be'emet, right? There's no, try to do it a little bit later. There's no reason to do it as early as possible. Fine. So look in the footnote. Yeah, 236. This definition of the putting on the tefillin in the morning is brought down in the Shulchan Aruch. He specified someone who meets, right, one meets occasionally, since if it's someone, right, who you know intimately, you might recognize him by his movements and gestures, even if it's too dark. So therefore it has to be, and if it's going to be somebody that you barely know, you won't recognize him until there's full daylight. So זה לא יכול להיות ממש החבר חבר, בגלל אז אתה יכול לראות אותו מרחוק, and it cannot be somebody also that you don't know at all, because then even if Mamashi is close by, you won't understand. You don't recognize him. So it has to be somebody that pachot yoter. Yeah. Now regarding the mitzvah of tzitzit, Shulchan Aruch says the mitzvah begins when there's enough light to distinguish between the tzitzit strand and the tchelet strand. According to the Rosh brought down in the Bet Yosef, both these criteria are the same time in the morning, and the Rashba, however, ruled that they do not refer to the same time. The Pri Megadim ruled that the time of recognizing someone whom you meet occasionally is later than the time of the tzitzit one. So it's mashma that it's two different times according to that shita. So when is that on the clock? Yeah. So he says like this: the Pri Megadim ruled that the time of recognizing someone who meets occasionally is 1/10 of an hour after dawn, right? So 6 minutes. Yeah. The Eretz HaChaim Sultan ruled, right, that it is an hour, right, before sunrise. And Kav HaChaim Sofer concurred that it is earliest for the mitzvah of tzitzit and tefillin. So he says like this: so the Pri Megadim ruled that the time of recognizing someone whom we meet occasionally is 6 minutes after the Alot HaShachar. That it's Chaim Sultan ruled that it is an hour before sunrise. And the Kav HaChaim Sofer also agree with that. So basically it's an hour. But they say that's the custom in Yerushalayim. In the Yalkut Yosef, he stated that the proper time to put on the tefillin is 12 minutes after dawn, right? But the people are in great rush to work, they could do it 6 minutes afterwards. But according to the majority of the poskim, the earliest time for the mitzvah of tefillin is the same as it is for tzitzit. Although some poskim rule that the tefillin, right, the time for tefillin is later than the time of the talit. Yeah. The Halacha Brura explained that we could follow the lenient opinion since the mitzvah of tefillin is enforced technically also at nighttime. So since the common custom in Yerushalayim is to put on the tefillin and say the bracha an hour before dawn, so we could practice accordingly, and we don't need to be concerned about the bracha that it's going to be a bracha levatala. Although technically Maran Rishon LeZion said that one must not recite a blessing unless there's a safek sfeka to permit it, the common custom overrides that. Okay? Now you have the Alichot Olam. So the Alichot Olam, he comes and he says, right, in the Chavedam, Maran Rishon LeZion ruled that the earliest time for mitzvah of tefillin is 6 minutes after dawn. The author of the Halacha Brura, however, testified that the Rishon LeZion explained to him that this leniency is only for the people that have to work. However, people that should refrain to putting it on until minimum of 12 minutes after dawn. Okay, and the Halacha Brura recommended waiting until the sky becomes light. So basically, what we're trying to do is that there's no reason to rush to put on the talit and tefillin if anyways you're not going anywhere. Meaning, that's what we mentioned before. Minyan HaPoalim, they pray before nets. Why? Because they have to get to work. So, for example, this happens in many places, right? That they have to go to work. So, okay, so they're going to have a minyan before the nets. Fine? They have a eter. But if they're already doing that, okay, so if they have to be lenient to put it on the earliest time, it makes sense. But if you're praying nets anyway, so why in the world are you going to do the earliest time possible when there's a machloket, and according to other shitot, you have to do it later on? So that's why he says here, the Halacha Brura recommended wait until later. In general, the poskim recommended that one not run to put on the tefillin at the earliest possible moment, unless one has a chart with the exact times calculated. People can easily miscalculate the moment of dawn. And therefore, again, the instructions of the Dor Letzion is, right, that the proper time is no earlier than an hour before sunrise, but it is best to wait until 50 minutes before sunrise, right? And that's also brought down in the 7 Ivreshet, right? He says you should wait until 52 minutes before sunrise, and Rosh Hashanah Orbach also waited until 50 minutes before sunrise. The response of Minchat Yitzchak ruled even more strictly that the proper time is between 15 to 30 minutes after dawn, which is 42 to 57 minutes before. So the Igrot Moshe testified that according to his personal observation, the correct time is between 35 and 40 minutes before sunrise. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky says it's no earlier than 36 minutes before sunrise. And Rav Elyashiv said that one should not put it on before 30 minutes before sunrise. So again, obviously we could still do the common custom of Yerushalayim at 50 minutes before sunrise, right? But again, meaning don't just, some people they think, zizim makdimim, the opposite. Here you have a question of Berachal Vatala. So if you have a question of Berachal Vatala, don't start running to put it on, right? You're right. Maybe I could find you an earlier time. You're right. I could find you 6 minutes afterwards, right? But we don't do that. So therefore, don't do 6 minutes afterwards. Make sure that it's going to be later on to make sure that at the end of the day, you want to, put it on at the best time possible according to the halacha. Okay.